I released an interview with Nick, and this year I'm going to be releasing another one. So thank you so much for your continued support, and please help me grow the platform by subscribing to this channel. Thank you.
And so I end up having his assets frozen in Switzerland, and we had a bit of a ding dong, and I got a death threat stuck to my front door, which was so I left Russia about 3 months after that. I mean, it wasn't the only reason, but it was a little bit of motivation, I suppose.
So Nick, it is a real honor to have you on the platform. I interviewed you a year ago, and it's a pleasure to have you on the platform again. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's good to be back.
So the first question I'd like to ask you is, in season 13, episode 6 of Dragon's Den, you were unimpressed with Steve's lack of transparency surrounding his business idea. So when you're considering an investment, what are the key things you look for?
Well, perhaps the most important thing is the person you're investing in, and if you if you don't think they're fundamentally honest and open, transparent, you wouldn't even start. And that was the problem with his. He was a perfectly competent business person, but I could tell from the way that he'd answered the question about when he said he put £560,000, and Deborah said, was that in cash? And he said, yes, but just in a way that made me suspicious. So I pushed a little bit further, and he said, well, actually, £75,000 of that was cash, and the rest was in the form of consulting. You think, well, I didn't really trust you any further than that.
And, Dragon's Den, returns this month. On Dragon's Den, did you ever pass on a business idea that you later regretted that you didn't back at the time?
Really, I've been asked that question before. There were some that worked out very well, like it was the gin cocktail club. But then again, I think they were very keen that they wanted to be with Sarah Willingham, so I wouldn't have got that anyway. So no, there's nothing I passed on that I later thought, missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime.
And just following on from that, one of your investments, the Snaffling Pig, is now a multi-million-pound company according to Buhurst. How has your approach to investing changed since you are on Dragon's Den? Or has it changed? I probably should be asking.
No, it hasn't really changed. The problem is Snaffling Pig, unfortunately. I think that information might be a little bit. They raised that. That's probably the value of the last valuation of the last time they raised money. What happened after that was, unfortunately, the factory that they were producing the product in had an outbreak of salmonella, and that really hit their sales.
Wow.
And although it wasn't their fault at all, it was the factory's fault, their contractor, and they were insured for their loss of earnings that year. But it did mean that they lost a lot of their contracts to rivals, and it's taken them quite some time to build that back. So although it's probably still one of the best businesses I invest in, and definitely it will result in a decent return. There are ups and downs in businesses, and that was one of the most unfortunate ones, just entirely not their fault. There we go. But fundamentally, my attitude hasn't changed. I look for a good team of people who will listen to good ideas and run with them. It's got to be it's got to be a good idea and an idea that I believe in, but most importantly, it's got to be a team of people who make it happen. And that means making it happen without me having to actually do the work. I can point them in the right direction, but they've got to be.
Thank you so much for that. And last year, you did an interview with Stephen, or last year, probably about a couple of years ago now, you did an interview with Stephen Bartlett in a reel he later posted on his LinkedIn page. At the time, you discussed what the essential traits of an entrepreneur was. Do those traits remain just as important in the age of AI?
You still need to have a willingness to decisions and do things. And I think that's the biggest difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurs. When I was doing on my MBA course, there were lots of people who were much brighter than all the entrepreneurs on the course, and they could come up with 10 different PowerPoint presentations. But it takes a certain type of mental courage to say, "Oh, I don't know all the facts, but we're just going to do B and go with it." And run with the consequences, and I think that's that decisiveness is what makes the difference, and that has changed by that.
And just a quick follow-up question. If you were starting a business now, what resources would you utilize that you weren't able to utilize when you first became an entrepreneur?
I think AI has speeded up research. Having said that, I'm not an AI skeptic, but you really have to back stuff up and understand where those facts are. So it can help you. It can speed up the process of research. You still need to understand where that fundamental information came from, because you can get thrown off pitch by AI. It can get the wrong end of the stick. So it's useful, but it's not the answer to everything.
Thank you. And while Dragon's Den is educational and has taught me about business, lots of other young people about business too, it's still TV and people like to be entertained. So what I wanted to ask you is, during your time on the show, how did you balance the entertainment factor with actually making serious decisions?
The easiest way to do that, which was not to think about it at all, and just treat it like I just treated it like a normal day in the office. People coming and asking me if I wanted, and I would have a normal human conversation with them. And if they can make something entertaining, that's great. But I think because dragons they're not actors, just ordinary people who invest in companies. And so the easiest thing is just to be yourself. And you're natural. If you're a natural person, allow yourself to be yourself and just do what you normally do. And then the BBC can do what they want to do with editing.
And like during your time on Dragon's Den, what were some of like the best pitches you heard, but also some of the most bizarre pitches? Kind of, there's a mixture of both on Dragon's Den.
Yeah, I mean, probably more of the bizarre ones. We had one which was a little thimble that with a couple of rollers on the front, and he appeared on the show with this thing. And of course, we don't know any more about it than the audience do at the point that they walk in through the door. And this thing was called Foldies, and it was designed to make folding a piece of paper easier. Well, I don't know about you, but I just use my finger, run my finger down the crease, and that seems to do the job. But this guy had somehow convinced himself that you needed a device to do this, and he'd spent a lot of his own money on a patent on this device, a patent for a device that nobody wanted anyway. I mean, nobody was legally allowed to copy it, but nobody actually wanted to copy it because nobody wanted to buy it. It's amazing. People get carried away with the idea that if you have a patent on something, that something is valuable. It's only valuable if people want to buy the thing.
And thank you so much for that, Nick. And during your time on Dragon's Den, you've seen so many pitches. What are the common pitfalls entrepreneurs make when they go before the dragons or go before investors in general?
My advice to everybody pitching is first and foremost, you've got to give a good argument why the customer will want to buy this product. Because as an entrepreneur, it's all very well explaining how much gross margin there is and how much money the investor is going to make, but none of this is going to work if the consumer doesn't want the product. And so that's perhaps the most important argument, argue why it is that the consumer is going to want the product and think it's good value. Everything flows from that, really. You've then got to. It's actually, there's an extra layer of that. You've got to argue that you've got to persuade me also that you understand the economics of it, and that there's enough money, there's enough profit in it. Because one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they just don't allow a margin in the product. They think it's price, and they're making 25% margin, and by the time you paid for marketing costs and everything else comes, you've got to be able to make money out of it, and it's got to be. The most important is you've got to argue why you are the best person to make that happen. Because for every successful, probably 1,000 others try to do the same thing. And the reason they failed is because the team who tried to do it, well, it wasn't the right team.
Thank you so much. And I'd also like to ask you a bit about, if you return to Dragon's Den, what industries would you be looking to invest in and why?
Not really look to invest in a particular industry on Dragon's Den because you get presented with it's just a wide variety of different businesses. They're by and large they're all consumer facing businesses because they need to be businesses that the audience will understand. They all tend to be fairly simple consumer facing businesses.
Thank you so much, Nick. And I'd like to ask you about your venture, the Wilts Ski Club. Could you just tell my audience about it, why you started it?
Yeah, so I opened an indoor ski club, and I've got an 8-year-old daughter, and I was trying to find somewhere for her to go skiing in between skiing holidays, and the nearest place was Milton Keynes, which is a 5-hour drive away, and I found a revolving ski slope in Chiswick, which was a bit closer, but still Chiswick. It was a 4-hour round trip. When I looked at the machine, I thought, oh, that can't be that expensive to buy. I looked it up and worked out it wasn't that expensive to buy. And then I wondered, could I build one next door? and it was all very theoretical until the land agent on the next near farm said, oh, actually, there's a building that's coming up for rent, and it was the perfect size and the perfect height. And I thought, that's a sign. So just rented it and created the Wilts Ski Club. Called the Wilts Ski Club because it's in South Wilts. And perhaps the important lesson in this is there was nothing new about that idea. The Dutch have been using revolving ski slopes for years, so the technology was there. It was known technology. The only thing about it that's the competitive advantage, it's in South Wiltshire, and there isn't another one. That's it. That's the only novel element to this. It's in South Wiltshire. And this is something that when people thinking of a new business, they're thinking, I've got to come up with something completely new. I've got to invent something that's never been thought of before. No. So sometimes all you need to do is think of something that exists somewhere else, but not where you live.
That's brilliant.
That's it. And amazingly, it's been completely full, particularly during the ski season. It's from October through till March. It's jam packed, and that's largely because there are so many people nearby who previously would drive all the way to Milton Keynes to go and to get some practice in and learn to ski before they go, and now they don't need to. It's also great fun. It keeps me fit.
I mean, that's brilliant. Like, even what you said, like, it's so like educational in a sense. I remember, like, at school, we learned about the 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. And you found the right place for your.
Yeah. And it's as simple as that. What's the competitive advantage? It's in Wiltshire.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You are a very successful entrepreneur and angel investor. What does success mean to you now compared to when you first started out?
I think the most important thing about success is freedom. The freedom to be able to do what you want to do, not have to worry, not have to worry so much about how to pay bills, being free to use your time how you want to use it. I think that's fundamentally that's what it means to me.
That's incredible. And yeah, I'd also like to ask you. There was this interview that you had done, and you talked about an incident in Russia where somebody had stole $10 million dollars worth of sugar, but it was a traumatic incident for you because they also like sent you death threats and things like that. Please, could you tell us firstly about the incident and how you bounced back from it to become successful? Because what's more important is actually your resilience rather than what you went through.
I was only in my 20s at the time that it happened. I was 20 or maybe I was 30, but either way, I was quite young, and it was the first time I'd ever had a death threat. And to some extent, you think that's quite exciting. It's a death threat. Never had one of those before. I mean, in your 40s, you think, oh my God, it's a death threat. That's bad. But it was what happened was that I've been working for a big commodity trading company, and I had the Russians in those days. The Russians had the money to buy sugar in the street, but there were no organizations that had enough money to buy a single cargo of sugar. So what we were doing was bringing sugar in from abroad and shipping it into warehouses that we rented, and then allowing it to be released from those warehouses once we've been paid. The problem was that somebody in Siberia who'd got about 10 of these warehouses and about $10 million worth of sugar just decided to help himself do it. And so I went to go and have a chat with him, and turned out he was some sort of a Siberian warlord. And so I ended up having his assets frozen in Switzerland, and we had a bit of a ding dong, and I got a death threat stuck to my front door, which was so I left Russia about 3 months after that. I mean, it wasn't the only reason, but it was a little bit of motivation, I suppose. And I handed the issue over to the insurance company that were dealing with the theft at that point. But it was a I wouldn't say it was traumatic. It was a wake up call, but Russians were fairly logical about that sort of thing. I mean, they generally would threaten you if you stop doing it. And at that point, I handed over to the insurance underwriters. The insurance underwriters took one look at it and just said no, and just write it off and walk away, and that was that. So I don't worry. I haven't walked around worrying that someone's going to blow my car up ever since.
Thank you so much, Nick. And according to the Financial Times, angel investing is far more complex than what it seems. In your opinion, what are 3 qualities that any successful angel investor must have?
Because every 3-year business plan takes 10 years. And I've been doing it now for, I think, 13 years. So long enough to be able to see a whole portfolio of things. And the first thing is things take longer than they're planned. And you need to be able to see very clearly how you're going to make 5 times your investment on every single investment, because only 1 or 2 out of 10 will do that. And on average, you might get an average return. You might get a 10% return. If you're lucky, you might get a 10% return over time across a portfolio. You might be just completely lucky. I mean, if you don't have very many of them and one of them's an absolute flyer, then you might be with the lucky few. But if you have a reasonable sized portfolio, you'll get a reasonable return. One thing I've realized about it is, to some extent, it's not dissimilar to gambling on horses. It's only fun watching a race if you've got some money on it. Mm-hmm. And there's no point in betting on something like, Centrica shares, which are likely to go up at 2 or 3% or 4%. That's no fun at all. You want something which could be the next Google, because then that's exciting, like buying a lottery ticket. And I think the most important thing about being an angel investor is you need to understand why you're investing. Are you investing because it's kind of exciting, it's a lot more risky, it's a bit of fun, you're pitting your experience against the experience of other people? Is it because you're trying to help entrepreneurs? Because I think an awful lot of angel investors are entrepreneurs themselves who've been lucky, been successful, and they actually genuinely want to help people coming the next rank of people. They're not there to rip them off. They're there to genuinely help them achieve their dreams. And if they make some money in the process, that's great. But you'll generally find the angel investing community is quite a positive and helpful community, and quite forgiving if things go wrong. Sometimes things just go wrong. If they go wrong because somebody was lazy or incompetent, that's one thing. But bad luck happens. And so I think angel investors just need to be clear about why they're investing. If you're investing in a wine business because you love wine, then don't be entirely surprised if it doesn't make you an enormous amount of money. But you get to play around with a vineyard, and that's fun. It's not a guaranteed way to make money, that's for sure. I look at my portfolio, and I've got a couple of big ones in there which could skew the figures, but on average, I think I've probably averaged about a 10% return on the money, which is nothing spectacular. Could have achieved the same if I'd left the money in my listed portfolio with Casno.
And that's incredible. And during your time, like as an angel investor, what have been like some of your greatest success stories? You don't have to tell me the figures or anything, but just in terms of what you've achieved.
There are a couple of my later investments have been the two that are the most exciting. One of them was a cancer biomarker business, which was some academic research, which got turned into a business, and I got involved very early on, and that's become very exciting because it's got the prospect of being able to detect lung cancer, ovarian cancer, and a few other cancers, probably 5 years before all current biomarkers can do that. So that's been very exciting and also useful. And I've sort of had a rule now that most of the angel investments that I do, and I've slowed down quite a lot, but I want to make sure they're socially useful as well as being commercially interesting. And the other one I invest in is a fungicide, because a lot of the fungicides that have existed for the last few decades are they can be to some extent quite toxic. The American EPA has started to cut down on which fungicides are allowed. So I invested in a new fungicide which uses far less copper and other and other metals than other fungi. That also is showing great promise. So that's exciting. I've had some complete duds as well. Yeah, it just happens.
Thank you.
And I think it's a little bit like when people say, all these publishers turned down J.K. Rowling and music publishers turned down the Beatles. It's actually very, very difficult to tell why a company is going to be successful, because there is an element of luck in the success of every startup, and you can't predict luck. And so there were lots of other companies that could have been Google. There was only really room for one to rise to the top. That happened to be Google. It could have been one of the others. And they could have just got ahead, and Google could have been knocked out. It's very difficult to tell, and so I don't blame people now in hindsight as an entrepreneur. I don't blame people for not having wanted to invest in Moonpig, because it just wasn't that certain that it was going to happen. We got lucky and it did work, but these are difficult calls to make at the time.
Thank you so much. And you were recognised in the Evelyn Partners Hall of Fame. What do you believe is the most critical factor in retaining customers?
Look after them. Look after them, give them what they want. If you look after them and give them what they want, they keep coming back. For me, repeat business is the most important thing that I look for in a business that's already up and running. I want to understand not only that people have been and bought once, I want to understand how quickly they came back, because a loyal customer base is the most valuable bit of marketing you can have. At Moonpig, for example, in the first 3 years, although we struggled to find ways of attracting new customers, the reason that we survived the first 5 years was because our existing customers didn't go away, and in fact we didn't spend any money on marketing for about 2 years, and we grew by 30% each of those years. And now I look around, there are very few businesses that can grow without spending money on marketing. But most of that is simply doing a good job and looking after your customer, picking up the phone when they call, and dealing with their problems quickly. What most customers want is when they've got a problem, if you answer the phone quickly, answer the phone, that's a very old-fashioned notion. A lot of companies don't do that, but I like the phone, because it's a way of, it's one opportunity you get as an online business. It's one opportunity you have to engage with your customer and convert them into a loyal zealot. And they come away thinking, that's fantastic. I called to complain. I spoke to a human being. They dealt with my problem. Wow, amazing. AI and chatbots can do a certain amount, but what you also got to have in the background is something that if you're an AI chatbot can deal with a problem 24 hours a day, and if it's a simple problem, they can do that much better than a customer service person, because 24 hours a day, and so that's the first line of defense. But if you're not answering their question immediately with that, you need to have another backup, which is a team of ninja customer service people who just pick it up and smooth their way through that problem, deal with the problem, sort it out, and the customer's left thinking, that was great service, I'm coming back. So sometimes you get better loyalty from people who've had a problem, and that problem has been fixed well, rather than people who've never had a problem at all.
Thank you so much, Nick. And the last question I'd like to ask you is, are there any other projects or ventures you'd like to tell my audience about?
No, I've got quite enough. I've got I'm trying to wind down my angel portfolio now, because I realise I've had quite. I won't really know if I'm any good at angel investing until I've actually sold them all. So I've decided to stop doing any more, and I'm just winding down the ones I've got. And part of the reason for opening the ski club was just to keep me busy and stop me doing other stuff in the interim. So no, for the only thing I will be doing for the next 12 months is it's skiing in my ski club. I'm doing my instructor's exams next month, that should keep me out of trouble.
Thank you so much, Nick, again for such a brilliant interview.
That's a pleasure. It was good speaking.